All good. All right, we'll make a start. Thanks everyone. Really appreciate you coming along. So welcome to inaugural Power BI for Government Community of Practice. It's really fantastic to see so many people here. I'm really overwhelmed by the response. And I was hoping, we could have 20, 30 people come along who want to talk about Power BI, but this is just amazing. So really what I would love for us is to build a community of practice that brings value to you, to your workplace, in your use of Power BI and analytics within, obviously, the government sector. Before we kick off, just some housekeeping to improve the experience of how we're going to run today. So we are using Zoom, and there's a lot of us here. So what I would ask is if you can mute your microphone, just so that there's not a lot of people talking, and there's too many faces here for me to go around and mute everybody. So really appreciate if you could mute your microphone. If you do have any questions, just pop them into the chat. So I'm monitoring the chat. If you're having any technical issues, or if you have any questions for the presenters, well, I think what we'll do is we do all the questions via the chat, and I'll ask the questions at the end of the presentation. So as the presentation is going, if you have questions, just drop them in there. So I am asking, if you're not a presenter today, that you would have your video off. It's not that I mind, it's usually nice to see everyone's faces, but I am told that we could have some bandwidth issues. So if all the presenters could have their videos on, but everyone else, if you wouldn't mind turning it off, we can always try next time if we're allowed to have our videos on. Now, a few people have mentioned that the timing, they have meeting clashes. So just to note that this meeting is being recorded. I will share it up on my DataTale YouTube channel for those who have missed the event. And I will send everyone a link so that you can go back and watch it. Or if you want to share it to one of your colleagues, you're more than welcome to do that. But in saying that, I don't have everyone here's contact details. So if you did register via this link, I will have your contact details, but I know obviously people have shared this around, which is fine, which is great, but I don't have your details. So what I'll do is I'll just pop the URL in the chat. So if you didn't register via this link, please do, and then I can just have your contact details to send you out the recording. And when we do have the next event, I'll be able to send that out to you as well. So I've just dropped that in the chat for you. Just a little introduction for those of you who haven't met me before. I'm Warren Dean. I've been working in government, local and state for around 15 years, but I now run a company called DataTale, which provides Power BI services to government. So I've trained nearly 300 people now in Power BI, and I've worked with many clients, government clients, in terms of end-to-end development, so Power BI report development, rollout of Power BI, best practice in terms of how you use Power BI in your organization, and also self-service enablement. So if you are interested in any of those things, please do reach out, send me an email, or contact me via LinkedIn if you are interested in how DataTale can support you on that journey. But what we are here today about is the Power BI for Government Community of Practice. So first, I really want to thank our speakers, Suman, Nick, Cristian, and Lisa. Really appreciate you putting together the time, put together your presentations, and we're really interested to see how you are using Power BI in your organization and how it's changing the way that you work. So what exactly is this community of practice, and how is it a little bit different to just your regular meetup? So essentially the difference is I'm hoping that we can build a community where not only we learn from one another, but we're also able to collaborate, that we can even share Power BI reports across organizations, collaborate and work together and build our knowledge collectively. So in the session today, we have 4 real-world examples. So people who are using Power BI within their business, but we're also going to have learning opportunities. So in our next meetup, which will probably be in around November, I'll confirm the dates with you. So we do have Jyoti and Dion are going to present, so some user stories. And I'm also going to present on my Power BI framework. So 80% of Power BI projects fail. So I'm going to show you a methodology that I've developed that helps you increase the chances that your project won't fail. So I'll be showing that in a couple of months when we meet up again. And we're also going to have updates. So what's new in Power BI, what's on the roadmap. The September Power BI update is going to come out soon, and we can see we've got series labels available here, which is a long overdue feature. So when you put a legend in, you can see the series labels now. And we'll also talk about things like what's on the roadmap. So did you know in January, we're going to get Power BI embedded into PowerPoint, which is going to be really interesting. So you can do your PowerPoint presentations and embed your Power BI live report in there and write your notes around the side. So we'll talk about some of the things that are coming up in the world of Power BI. So that's really what I hope to build, and I really hope that you come along with us on that journey. The more, the merrier. So let any of your colleagues know. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Lisa to you. So Lisa Smith is a business systems administrator at Devonport City Council. And Lisa, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and if you can share your screen, and we'd love to see a presentation on how you've created your operating works report.
Thanks, Warren. No. Right, hopefully everyone can see that screen now.
Oh, well, you did. Sorry, Lisa, just disappeared. It was there and then it disappeared.
Oh, I can see it.
Oh, you can see it?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's just my view. Sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
Right. Oh, that's good. Yes, I've been with Devonport City Council for about 2.5 years now. As Warren said, I am the Business Systems Administrator, and I look mainly after Technology One, our main core finance and property and rating system. And I was lucky enough to meet Warren probably end of April, May. Devonport started our Power BI journey this year, and we engaged Warren for a bit of consulting work to just give a bit of guidance to me, because it's all brand new, this Power BI is, but it's a lot of fun. As you can see, I'm here in an app at the moment. I've grouped up our workspace and put in our operational works, a few of their reports into an app here. We've got our lead balances. We've got some work orders and triage, which isn't quite fully finished. And we've got our operating works. And what I've done we've got a little splash screen, just a little startup page, just to explain each of the tabs down the side, which each page is actually going to display. And one of the key things in here is also to let the users know when the table is going to be updated. So in the project summary, we've got here all tables are updated nightly. However, our payroll transactions update each fortnight when the payroll and timesheet posting process is run. Now, this report is aimed for our works coordinators and our works manager. And then it flows up as well to our executive manager and then down to our overall infrastructure and works manager. But this report was aimed for them. Due to last year, we completed a asset project which changed all our reporting in a way. We have our normal general ledger reporting, which everyone receives a copy of the general ledger each month, but that's our top level reporting. The works coordinators work off a subsidiary ledger, our project ledger, which flows down to our assets, or flows the other way. Our assets are all attached to a project ledger, which flows up to our general ledger costing centres. Now, in here, this is the main summary screen, and this is the screen where I'm aiming for our coordinators to use mainly. It just gives a snapshot of last year's actuals. It shows this year's budget and this year's actuals, and then we're using the traffic light system to show what's under budget, getting close, or over budget. If I just go down, go to parks and open space. Here, it's probably a good one. So we've got some red in here. And then over here on the left-hand side as well, it just gives it showing a snapshot as well as all the accounts that actually are over budget. Now, this has been extremely handy as well. As I said, our assets are linked to this project ledger and flows up to the general ledger. They're not the general ledger goes into one big pool, but the project ledger does break down to a lot of different areas. And we've been able to find that our assets have been incorrectly allocated. So we've been able to fix those allocations up in the last month. This has only been live in the last month, so it's been a good chance to go through and check all of our actual costings. And through here, we can actually, I've got a drill through, we can go down to the period balances. And this gives a breakdown of last year's costs and the actuals. Now, what we're going to do, at the moment, our budget doesn't break down into each month. So using this next year, when we come around to our budget, come February, we're going to be using this report to break down each of the costings for each month. At the moment, it's just split evenly against each single month the budget is. So we're going to try and pick some spikes. Obviously, when there's changeover and fertilising in the grounds, we have a big spike in the park site, sorry. So we want to try and capture that. And this is where this report is going to come in handy. But we can also go through here. I'm using the matrix little buttons here. If I click on these properly, you can come all down. You can just keep drilling down, and we can come down and also keep drilling through to the transaction details. So we can come back through there. Then we've got some little back buttons coming along. Now, this is very much a report-based dashboard. There is not a lot of pretty visuals in here, but I do have a few for the guys. They can come in here. They can filter down to their own specific area of interest, and they can just see some visuals here, or they can just go back to the actual report. As I come through here, it's also linked to our Projector and work system. Now, the work system, this one is quite important, and I love the matrix in this one because obviously the coordinators are interested in this level, but if I come down here, our works manager is interested in just the overall breakdown of all the resources. So this is a really good, I love the matrix for this. And the same thing again, I've got some pretty visuals so they can come down here into the months. They can just go over and look at the tooltip and see how much the actual cost is there for each month. And they can go back. I've also put in the previous year and preparation for next year as well. In here, we've just got the overview. And as I mentioned, our assets are based on a project ledger, and we can come in here. I have got one here. Didn't put over miscellaneous buildings. This is one that was over budget, and we're able to put the project ledger in here, and this just worked brilliantly. I was able to link our work orders and to our assets to what was all linking back up to this project ledger. Previously, before we had this dashboard, we weren't able to do this type of reporting. We would have to run the work orders separately and then probably run an asset list and try and join them together in Excel, and yeah, a little bit messy, running a few different reports. But now we can do it all in the one. And we've just got got all the erase clear buttons. I've just put some little buttons, clear filters in here to try and clear it out. And again, if they just want to come down here and look at contractors, we can get an overall view across the organisation of what work orders have had contractors attached to them, what assets, and then we can actually get the whole project ledger down here as well. And what I've tried to do in a lot of these screens is still have the drill through. Oh, obviously, I picked one with no cost, didn't I? Actuals, here we go. No, I seem to have broken that. That's good. But yes, hopefully I'll go back and fix that. That should drill through to the transaction screen as well, right there. Again, now these final script tabs I've got down the side. These will probably are for our manager. This is what our works manager sort of requested, just a big overall breakdown of the project ledger through here. And as I mentioned, these are our cost centres, which are linked to our general ledger. So this is just to give a quick overview based at the cost centre level. And then we do link all our assets here. And this space goes back to our asset register. And this has all the attributes with our asset register. It does take a while to load in. We have quite a lot of assets in our asset register. And you can just see from the visual here I'm using. This is the fun one. It shows this. It's got probably the most work orders attached to it. It's got 536 work orders. And that's our cemetery, all our lovely plots out there, all the work that the guys are doing at the cemetery there, all the maintenance. So we can go down and also look at the work orders through there as well and see how much each one is actually costing, the bit of work they're doing. And we've also got all these selection codes based on for our asset team if they do need to go in here as well. And we can go through to our work orders. So we have our work orders numbers here. We can just put a search in if someone wants to have a quick look at a work order, what the costs are. This is showing our actual commitments and total costs. Now, all these tables are coming through from Technology One. We have an ETL that runs every night. It comes through here, goes into Azure, into the blob containers, and we do a nightly update from there. And this is just a quick snapshot of our budget. Because some of the issues I did have with trying to put all this together was trying to get all the fact tables actually working and getting all the information to join together. It was a little bit of a challenge, and it didn't help that some of the information wasn't straightforward. I had to exclude our cost centres we're picking up to this from 2300 to 2399, but I had to exclude certain project ledgers. So it was a little bit of cross-checking between the works manager and myself we were doing. So that was probably the easiest way. And he actually did like me leaving the budget in there. We're just doing this for a bit of cross-checking towards his spreadsheet and what was in the system, just to fact-check the data that we were picking up and ensuring we're pulling in all the transactions coming through that was needed. So hopefully I haven't gone over time. And yes, any questions?
Yeah, thanks. So we do have one question, Lisa. Is all the data coming from one data source? Is it all Tech One, or do you have it coming from any other data sources?
With this one, it is all Tech One, totally Tech One data source. I do have another one that I was pulling in a certain spreadsheet from that's used in our budget preparation. But yeah, no, this is all totally Tech One. Lots of different tables. It's pulling in our tables from our project ledger, our asset ledger, asset transactions, and our asset actual register and work orders.
Excellent, thank you. A question from Eng. The various data that Lisa presents, can it be done via commercial accounting software instead of relying on Power BI per se? She said she's not very familiar with BI.
Yes, it should be able to, as long as you've got a connection that can import, like I'm using Azure SQL. So as long as you've got something to pull in, you should be able to.
Yeah, I think unless that question is referring to, whether you could do it within Tech One natively, which...
We can do certain parts of this within Tech One. We do have to pay for the analytics license. I don't know if a great deal about all the analytics. I don't know if I would be able to get a little bit of the flexibility there that I've been able to do in Power BI. but I may be able to or not. But I know certainly in some of my other reports that I'm not using wholly Tech One information. I can't pull information into Tech One as easily. I can pull information into Tech One, but to try and get it into a visual, it's not as easy as Power BI.
Yes, and yeah, you're definitely very limited in what you can do, whereas with Power BI, you have a lot of flexibility and you can connect outside the system, like Lisa's done to an Excel spreadsheet, which you wouldn't be able to do with some enterprise system. Question from Cristian. He just wants to know, are you connecting Tech One directly to Power BI or are you connected to SQL?
SQL, I'm extracting the data each night, and just putting it into the data factory, transforming it through to the SQL database. Yes, and thanks to Warren, I met Tash, who was absolutely wonderful in helping me there, because it's all brand new to me, it was. But yeah, it's amazing what you can learn in 6 months.
No, it's quite an achievement, isn't it? And I'll note everyone there, if you saw the use of apps. So if you're not using apps in your organization, maybe we can do another session where we talk about apps. But apps is really good in terms of how do you push something out to the enterprise outside of your workspace. Last question from Tiago. How did you go about validating your data sources? Did you have any issues with stakeholders questioning your data accuracy?
Yes. That was my biggest challenge, yes, trying to get my data accurate, because a table I thought I was using was perfect. My data was coming out matching, but then once I was trying to link it then to the budget, obviously I was having then accounts that weren't in both tables. So I had to then go back to the drawing board, restart it all and pull in a base table, as I called it, that reads all the new GLs, project ledgers that come in, and then just updates each table if they're not in there to just make sure it all matches. So yes, data validation was very fun. I think it probably ended up delaying me with that, and in the financial year, delayed me probably about a month rolling this report out.
Yeah, excellent. Great questions. Well, thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate you spending that time with us. It's quite insightful, and what you've been able to do in 6 months is very impressive. So I look forward to see what you're on to next. Is there another report you're working on now?
Yes, our planning applications, doing the planning applications, and then our building and plumbing permits. Yes, so planning is probably 95% finished. I'm just working on getting some average days and turnaround times of our applications now to meet our CDC requirements as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Now, I need to apologise to everyone who's not here and going to be watching the recording, but it appears that we're maxed at 100 people. So really apologise about that. I will send out the recording session. I've upgraded my license, but it looks like I created this before I upgraded the license. So we're stuck. So apologies for you, the 100, you are the lucky 100. And I apologize to everyone else who will be watching this on the recording. We'll get that sorted for the next event. So next up, Suman, are you there? Would you like to share your screen? Suman is Senior Data Analyst at Glen Ira City Council here with me in Victoria. And he's going to show us a customer request dashboard and a councillor dashboard. Suman, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. So good afternoon. Myself, Suman. I work in, as Warren mentioned, in Glen Ira City Council, and I am the only person who is doing the entire data engineering as well as the data analytics out here. So I started with one of the processes where we had overtly manual intervention. So we get requests from, our community are able to send certain requests to the councillors directly, and those are treated as high priority requests by the council. So these are the councillor requests that we kind of monitor, and we have to report them in our executive meetings to the executives in different, for every month. So when I started with it, what I found is we get requests from email, and then it has been updated into a system called Pathway sometimes. And as continuous spreadsheet is maintained by one person just to pull out emails and put it as a request in that particular spreadsheet. And that's how they count the number of requests that are outstanding, which are kind of closed. So it's a completely manual process. So I built a small dashboard for them. And what you see is a kind of mocked up version, because I can't show the real values. And that's where you will see some weird years. But in essence, what I had done is I had done a complete automation. So here, if they come, they can select the department. Each department can see whatever counselor request has come to them. They can see, they can sort it by the year. And over here, it's the kind of things it will show by department, the statuses, various statuses. So inquiry received, no actions required, close, open kind of thing. And these are the portion where we have, this is the open request by different department. So once the person goes into, for example, if they want to see the details of the request, so there is drill through, as Lisa showed her in her presentation as well. So they can get into this. They can see the beans. These are some dummy request numbers I had to build: start date, end date, the days for which the request had been opened, and there are some kind of icons to figure out, like whether it's a crossed our limit within 3 days, less than 1 day, or something like that. So these are the different icons. So that's the essence. But what I did is I have kind of, I'll show the, I have done a kind of end-to-end automation of these things. So what we have is, we have the data in a pathway, which is in a SQL database. Now, from that SQL database, I pull out the data into in our Azure SQL, which we have in the cloud. And from there, we create the so this is the kind of architecture that we have. We have the on-premise databases sitting on the SQL. Then I use Azure Data Factory to pull it into the data lake as well as the Azure SQL. And then over here, I can put them in the Power BI. So in the Power BI, we put the raw data into something called the data flow. And then we have automated that to have it scheduled. I'll show that over here. So in my workspaces, I use a particular workspace to have all the data flows. So for example, if I have the pathway request, so this is a data flow which gets refreshed every day. And it contains the tables from where I have pulled the data out of our operational databases. And then the data flows are basically the entities that is modeled into something called the data sets. Again, if you see the application, pathway application data sets, these are getting refreshed daily. So this is a kind of complete automated process that I had developed, and it has taken up the manual effort of the people developing these reports, and it's kind of added to working days for each cycle. So for each cycle, we are saving around about 2 working days. So that's the productivity gain that we could get out of this automation. So that's about it. I'll show another report that we have also built. So we have something called Snapsend Solve, which is an app that can send a request. The community members can take a snap of that, whatever defect or anything you find, and you can raise a request to council through the Snapsend Solve application. Now that data gives me latitude, longitude, as well as the link to where they have the actual snaps. So what I had done is I have plotted them, and then the engineers, they can take a look into all these things. And now that's the magic. I'm not here. So there I had put a snap in this tooltip, which sometimes come up, depends upon the bandwidth. I think we are a bit challenged with our bandwidth, but this comes as a kind of a image on the top of this request. So the engineers, they can see the extent of the problem before getting into the actual site. So this is another thing which I had developed for the council. And that is one of the things where the engineers get time to look into things before they get into the site. So that's the.
Excellent. Thanks, Suman. So we have a couple of questions. If I just find where my chat disappeared to. Oh, where'd it go? Chat. There we are. Okay. Question from Jane. Why use data flows when you have a data warehouse?
Yes, data flow, the way it has been used is to decouple your backend system from Power BI. Say, for example, tomorrow I want Oracle system or any other database to be installed as backend. I can just connect those entities to the data flow without making any other changes to my front-end applications. So everything else will perform as it is. And this is how we do in our data warehouse settings. We decouple the different layers from one another. So data flow, I mean, yeah, you are right in a way that entities are kind of replicated, but there is a provision of decoupling Power BI from the backend applications by using the data flow.
Excellent, thank you. Question from Cristian. Data Flows is using Microsoft Flow, or is it a built-in tool in Power BI Online?
It's a built-in tool in Power BI. So you can create entities using the data flow. So that's basically the entities, your raw tables. In the Power BI ecosystem, it's the entity of the entities are represented as data flow. So you take those entities in data flow and then do the modeling in data set, and then you have the report. So that's how things are layered in Power BI.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that as well. If you're interested in best practice in how we roll out in enterprise, you can see how Suman separated his data sets, the data flows, the reports. And so using that process then allows those data sets to be managed within one workspace, and also enables you in self-service when you're pushing data sets or allowing your end users to connect to data sets. It's all managed within the one workspace.
And I can give access at a data set level. So if people need two different, I can have two different data sets in the same workspace, but I can give access to two different people at a data set level below the workspace level. So that level of granularity is provided.
Excellent. And the last question for you, Suman. Have you tried exporting base 64 image from the database to flat file, reducing the resolution?
No, I haven't done that. Probably I'll have to, the image that we derive is basically a Power BI visual that I had built, and that is currently in the tooltip over there. So I think if there is something which helps in the bandwidth, definitely I'd like to explore that.
Excellent. And sorry, one last question from Jane. Which is better, decoupling from reports using data flows or using data sets?
So data flow and data sets are in Power BI philosophy serves two different purposes. Data flows are the entities. So that is how you decouple your backend system from Power BI. So you have your entities in Power BI pulled out from different native databases and create your entities. Data set is basically the model. So you can pull out different parts of the data from your entities and you can generate models. So the model is separated out from the report by using data set. And entity is separated out from the model by the data flow. So you have the entity, the model, and the report. These are the three layers of the Power BI ecosystem.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And Ray's just put a note in here. If this is all new to you, you can think of the entity as a table.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Suman. Really appreciate your presentation. Got a lot out of that, and especially at the back end and the work that you've done there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just checking, is Nick Ware, are you here? I do know that we're limited to participants. So you are here. Awesome. Yep. All right. Cheers, mate. Nick's going to go next. Would you like to share your screen, Nick?
Sure. Just got to wait for Suman to unshare his.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So yeah, for those who don't know, Nick is a BI performance reporting analyst from Camden City Council in New South Wales. And his presentation is going to be doing swimming pool inspections. Yes, we can see your screen now, Nick.
Awesome. Thanks, Warren. Afternoon, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Nick Ware, and I'm working at Camden Council. A little bit on Camden Council first. We're located southwest of Sydney. We're one of the fastest growing LGAs in Australia at the moment. And in the past couple of years, we're putting a really big emphasis on like business intelligence, data visualization, and like data management. So we have our organizational strategic plan that kind of sits across that and has laid out a roadmap for corporate improvement. And then we have more specifically our digital innovation strategy, which is really looking at that roadmap in the lens of our digital infrastructure and architecture. So looking at better integration between systems and better accessibility to data for the purposes of data insights and visualization. So that's kind of happening over the next few years. What I'm doing now with Power BI is really happening kind of before that to get us some foundations of data visualizations. So my role at Camden Council is a business intelligence analyst. I've been in the role for about 18 months now. And I've been using Power BI in that role for about 12 months. It started with doing Warren's training, the local government training. And about 6 months ago, I did my Microsoft certification for Power BI. My primary functions really is just doing the visualization component and using that to then support executive and managers to provide data analysis and insights and support decision making. Key projects related to that is the Executive Dashboard Project, which is really focused on organizational health. So things like financial performance, workforce metrics, operational performance. And then the one which swimming pool inspections kind of sits under is our service level agreement program. So our business improvement team are working with each of our service owners to review and define our service standards for all of our different services. And then my role is to then come into that and help develop some reporting to be able to monitor those service standards and provide this via Power BI. A large chunk of my time at the moment is also taken up with the data collection and extraction. So I do most of the, I suppose, data engineering component myself at the moment, kind of a team of one until we can kind of expand out our data team at Camden Council. So the reason I chose our swimming pool inspections report is really to kind of show an overview of what our typical report and how we develop it at Camden Council. So this is the report design methodology that I've put together. It's a fairly, I think, standard approach to report design. And I'll just drill into a couple of those key components today to show how we identified our business requirements, how we sourced our data, and then show the final report and visualization. So the business drivers behind swimming pool inspections, as I mentioned, was first that they have a new service level agreement that's been developed. This has identified some new KPI measures that they haven't previously reported on. So there was a need for us to develop a report there. Additionally, they've also recently gone through kind of an overhaul of their system in Civica Authority. They have a new register and a new workflow, which means they also have kind of data sitting in their old configuration and their new configuration. And then also the reporting that they were doing was very manual. It relied on doing a record search in Authority, kind of counting those records and then plonking that number in a spreadsheet each month. So it's quite manual and doesn't really give them much detail in that information. It's just the number that they get for the month. So the needs for this report was really, we needed a report that satisfied the needs for those monthly stats, as well as their annual reporting or legislative requirements. They needed the ability to monitor those new KPIs and service standards. We wanted more dynamic time intelligence. So we didn't want to have to only have a single figure for a month. And if they wanted to then see a quarter or 6 months or a week, have to go do another Authority search. And then we wanted to kind of automate that data extraction process. So we ideally wanted to eliminate the need to go into the Authority system and do searches. We wanted them to be able to open up this report and just have a one-stop shop of any stat that they wanted to look at. So then to get the data, this project in particular is quite convenient in that all the data that we required does exist in our Authority databases. So we could be pulling data from our swimming pool register, our customer request module, as well as our property database. The extraction process was done using SQL. So I wrote scripts to pull out the required fields that we wanted from all the various tables. And then we used an FME software to run those extracts on a nightly basis, save them as CSV files into a SharePoint Online website. And then from there, we can connect to that and bring it into Power BI to do the transformation. So I'm just going to switch over to the Power BI report now. Let me know if everyone can see it on the screen.
Yep, we can see that.
Awesome. I'll just make it full screen. So I'm just going to call out a couple of the key areas in the report. Key design philosophy in this was keeping it as simple as possible and easy to kind of digest the information. So we kind of stayed away from either more intricate visualizations or too many drill through and drill down and filters. Really just making it so that you click up the report, open it, and you can just read the information that you need immediately off that top level. So in the top left, we have some custom cards set up, which have our service level KPIs. They can see a simple like sparkline trend that highlights high and low points. And then they have dynamic value that can actually tell them the month-to-month value with a red, amber, green indicator for performance. We then have a scorecard for their annual reporting requirements. So again, keeping it nice and simple, they're labeled the exact same way as what they have to fill out each year legislatively. So they can pull those numbers up at any time. The favorite visual of the manager is the map box visual down in the bottom left, which allows them to kind of see their workload on a suburb basis in the LGA. In our compliance departments, a lot of their work can be distributed out by a suburb. So it's good to be able to see the workload differences to be able to then allocate that work in a more even manner across offices. And then for their basic kind of workload stats, so like number of applications, number of inspections, we just have some simple bar charts, which made it fairly easy for them to read their stats. But we did introduce the ability to do some basic drill downs, and so they can see via year or go down to a week or even individual day level if they want. And then just to give a little bit more detail to the team leader, we did add a basic drill through page on these graphs. So they can actually drill through and see the specific authority records. So this lists out all the tracking items that their officers will be completing against each application. They have the option to filter via the type of task, so they can view their inspections, see the individual duration and commentary against it. And that just allows them to more easily follow up if something took longer than expected, or if there's any issues happening with one of their indicators. So it just gives them a nice, simple secondary screen to see a little bit more detail and follow up with their team. So some of the challenges from this, if I'm honest, this project actually ran quite smoothly overall. We had a quite clear understanding of intent of what we wanted in the report, but we did run into some creative challenges with the data that we had to overcome, as I'm sure we always do. So a big one was the actual extraction method. So we currently don't have access to any APIs for Civica Authority, and we don't have any permanent warehousing solution in place. So that's where we were using a SharePoint Online location to enable us to do the scheduled refreshes in Authority, and using the FME software to run those extracts and store it there in place of something like a Azure Data Factory or Data Blob. As I mentioned, they did have a change in their workflow structure, which really meant that we had two sets of data that we needed to kind of merge into one. So we looked at the old documentation from the implementation of those workflows and just did a mapping exercise of the old workflow into the new one. So in Power Query, we actually build in that transformation and combine the old and new together to give us one full data set. We found some required data fields were missing. So that's particularly around like the annual scorecard. We had no way to determine multiple single dwelling and like tourist attraction locations. So we had to add in a couple extra fields into the system and then get an admin staff to help kind of backdate that data so that we actually had it in the system to use. And then finally, there was one issue around identifying mandatory pools. So the process they have in place is they're creating a new application for the same pool every 3 years, which then runs into the issue of we have to report on how many mandatory pools we have in the LGA, and we can't just do a simple count of records. And we couldn't do a distinct count on like the record ID because each pool would have multiple records. We initially tried to do this off property data, but with the level of development happening in the Camden LGA, this wasn't a reliable source, and we couldn't really be confident in the consistency there. So we ended up adding in a field that records the New South Wales swimming pool register reference number and using that as our unique identifier. Some of the outcomes for this, we did achieve getting that sort of single click accessibility to the data. We have a dedicated workspace and app for the Environment and Regulatory branch. They can click on that app and see any sort of reports relevant to their area, which includes the swimming pool report. There's confidence now in the data accuracy and consistency. Like we're not relying on people doing manual searches and counting records to get our data. We're using a structured approach through the Power Query and data model to ensure that we actually have the same process happening each time that we calculate these stats. It's increased the transparency and understanding between how what we put into our authority system translates into our performance. And this has really allowed the team leader to identify opportunities for training and things to reiterate back to their officers to say, to ensure that they're doing the process in a consistent manner and to ensure that they are getting the relevant and correct data back out of the report. Some more generic outcomes out of this, as kind of Suman's done and as Warren's mentioned, we've separated the data model from the report and set it up so that we can reuse that for more specific analysis for swimming pools down the track and even expand upon it. So if we wanted to bring in, say, applicant information, we could bring that table in and attach it into the data set quite easily. And then I've actually was able to use this as a foundation to create a data model template where all I have to do is change a single parameter and I can reuse this data model for development applications or for swimming pools, food shop inspections. So almost any register or application that we put through our authority system, which has been a really big time saver from my perspective, given that I'm kind of a single resource working on all of these reports. That's everything.
Questions? Yeah, I love that approach of using that model as a template. I think that's a great idea. Is there any questions? Does anyone want to drop any questions in the chat for Nick? Really good. Thank you for sharing your challenges as well. There's always challenges, so it's good that we can share and see that.
Yeah, I feel like most of our experiences and exercises with doing Power BI is just overcoming problems.
Excellent. Okay, no questions. All right, so let's move on. Excellent, Nick. Really appreciate you sharing. Thanks for your time and your presentation.
Nice.
Next, I'm going to introduce Cristian. He's a student engineer at Melton in Victoria, and his presentation is about automated subdivisions, mapping dashboard, integration, Python, and Mapbox API. We'll just drop as many technical words as we can put in there. So really looking forward to seeing your presentation, Cristian. Looks good. If you can share your screen.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Cristian. All yours.
All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, hello, everyone. Thanks, Ware, for organizing the event. I'm Cristian Harra. I work at Melton City Council on the Strategic Transport Planning team. And today I will share my experience developing an automatic updating subdivision status dashboard. So let's get into it. So I would like to start with a little bit of background. So as you may know, Melton is one of the fastest growing municipalities in Victoria. So this means that there are constantly new developments, projects and subdivisions applications, so which results in over $200 million in developer delivered assets each year. So the objective of this dashboard was to show a real-time snapshot of the subdivision status, civil, streetscape, and reserve, as well as the corresponding ASPEC data status for each stage. So what were the problems on building this dashboard? First, we have a large SQL data set that has some mixed geometries like multi-polygons and multi-line strings. And if you have used Mapbox, you know that Mapbox doesn't like complex geometries. The second, to get an up-to-date map, we would have to manually update the geometries in Mapbox. And so the challenge was to come up with a solution that doesn't create additional workload to our really busy GIS and asset team without changing the existing data capture flow. So what would have been a traditional approach for this? So first, you will need to connect Power BI to the SQL database directly and clean the data using Power Query. For the geographic data, you will need to open, clean, and modify the geometries on a GIS software like QGIS or ArcGIS, and then generate a shape or GeoJSON file. And only after that, you will be able to upload this file to create a new tileset using Mapbox Studio. Use the tileset ID and link to plot the map on Power BI. That's not all, because you would have to do these last two steps every time a new subdivision is added or modified. So I think the GIS team would be so happy with that. So we needed an integrated solution. So I used Python to write a library that integrated all the processes. So this library allowed you to connect, clean, and transform the data from SQL, modify the complex geometries that Mapbox doesn't like, and automatically generate the GeoJSON file to finally upload it to Mapbox using the Mapbox API. And as a bonus, I optimized the map updating process to avoid additional costs when using the Mapbox API. So since the idea of this presentation is not to bore you with a lame Python script, I will just go through the implementation process and how this library works. So first, I would like to mention that this library uses some open source packages like Pandas, GeoPandas, and some others that you can easily find in GitHub. So the process starts with connecting to SQL Server to get the up-to-date database, clean this data, modify the complex geometries, and change the projection from GDA 94 to WGS 84. And to make it a little bit more Mapbox friendly. So then Python automatically creates a temporary GeoJSON file that we can use in Mapbox. So here's where the Mapbox API enters. First, Python verifies whether or not the tileset we are trying to modify already exists in the Mapbox database? And if yes, the tile set is updated, and if not, the tile set is created. And after all this creation and updating process is done, it takes time, sometimes a little bit too much, depending on your internet. So then Python returns a clean and updated database to Power BI, and the dashboard is updated. So where's the bonus? Well, in order not to go through all the process of updating the tile set, because sometimes the subdivisions are not changing or there are no new subdivisions, then Python saves the data into a backup Excel file in every update and compares it with the up-to-date information from SQL and check if the subdivision geometries have changed or not. If yes, well, you have no option and go other than go to the update process. If no, you don't need to do it, and so no money is required. So, sorry. So the result is an up-to-date subdivisions status dashboard where you can track the ASPEC data status and the subdivision status. From the ASPEC, you can track the road specification, the drainage, the open space. You can track the civil, the streetscape, or the surface status of the subdivision. So you can select on the subdivisions. You can select a single subdivision from the drop-down box, and you can select either from the drop-down box or from the map an individual stage to get the up-to-date information, as you can see in the on the slide. So in conclusion, using Python to integrate Mapbox, SQL, and Power BI works. Dashboard can be implemented without changing current data flows. You can automate the tile set creation in Mapbox and the update process. And obviously, no dedicated staff is required to update the Power BI dashboard because you can schedule in the Power BI online. And the dashboard can be used for catching errors in data entry. So that's all from me.
Yeah,
thank
fantastic.
you. If you have any questions.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, obviously, very technical report, and then also I really enjoy the beautiful design you've got at the end as well. So well done, Cristian. Great work. We do have a question from Dion. Where does Python get the base data source for the mapping? Google Maps is the question. Oh, is it Google Maps?
Yeah. So the base map in Mapbox is it's the default base map in that comes with the Mapbox plugin in Power BI. Yeah, but the data for the subdivisions comes from SQL.
Excellent. And any other questions anyone wants to drop into the chat? No? Well, good. Excellent, Cristian. Well, I'm sure anyone can send Cristian an email if they've got any other questions, but really fantastic presentation, Cristian. A lot of effort there you've put into that, especially that back-end Python work is very impressive. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Ware.
All right, I'll just share my screen again. So thanks everyone for attending. So we're planning to have another event in November, and we're going to have 2 more presentations, and I'm going to run through a bit of a how do you run a Power BI project and how do you avoid your project falling over, and take you through the kind of six kind of steps in running a Power BI project. Again, if you haven't registered, please do drop in a link. I'll just put it in there again. So if I don't have your email, and apologies again for the people who weren't able to attend. So for the next session, I've increased the limit up to 300. So hopefully no one will miss out next time. So I do really apologize for that. But if you haven't registered, drop the link there so I can send you that email link. Now, again, there's a whole heap of free resources. I'll drop in an email as well. If you want to go to DataTaleAU.com.au. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Happy to stick on the line if anyone wants to have a chat. But that's the end of our official event. So thank you so much for all coming along. And hopefully I'll see you in November when we have the next one. So thank you, everyone. Great to see you all.